I think there's one thing that we all wonder after the first time we hear the modulated voice of a Dalek. Boy, I want to hear them sing. So, this is another fan work related to Doctor Who. This is Symphony of the Daleks. This is a Patreon sponsored commission. So, if you too want to consider commissioning me to review something, there's the Patreon. We'll plug it right at the front. Sure, why not? Now, this is not my first encounter with this particular grouping of fan work. I did a review a little while ago for one that takes place chronologically a little before this. The Woman in the Ceiling, I think it was called. It was quite good, although it took me a little while to get into the groove of how this works. Because at this point, I am very used. This is an audio adventure. So first of all, no visuals, all audio. Well, I mean, some visuals, they have still art up for a lot of it, but it's not it's three pieces of art throughout the entire thing. It's not like it gives you any crucial information. Nothing's in motion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at this point, I'm very used to Big Finish reviews, or doing those reviews rather. Oh God, my brain is catch up. Come on. So I'm very used to engaging with that for Doctor Who audio, and these are structured a bit differently in that they also have a narrator. Whereas Big Finish is done purely as an audio drama, and you are meant to be able to tell exactly what is going on only through the performances of the actors, sound effects, and music. You get no omniscient narrator describing anything. This series does actually have that. And while it's certainly by no means bad, it flows well, it works perfectly fine. It definitely, when I did the first one, which if you want to see that review, there's that. When I did that first one, it took me a little while to get the hang of that. And that is also the case here. Now, the way that they do the Doctor and the Companion is also a little odd, because this was kind of postulated and presented as an alternate Series 11 that had different casting. So they have, I believe, amateur voice actors playing the Doctor and the Companion, whose name is Jesse, but the actors are deliberately portraying them in the manner of existing actors. So the actor playing the Doctor isn't just playing the Doctor, he's playing Donald Gleason as the Doctor, basically kind of postulating how would this Doctor be, what would this performance be like if this actor was playing it. And similarly with Jesse, there with it being postulated that the Companion was Lana Condor. So it's already kind of an odd presentation and premise. What is nice is that I'm not familiar enough with Lana Condor to know how accurate that voice work is, but the voice work on the Doctors, it's you get what he's going for. It certainly works, and thankfully, it never comes across like the focus on getting the impression right is hampering the performance. They are giving solid performances. So as odd as the conceit on this is, with the way the Doctor and the Companion are done, it doesn't actually hamper the end result in a way that I honestly would have, if not expected, been very wary of if I had known before listening to either of these, exactly what it was I was getting into. You tell me that premise as a way to handle it, I'm like, that seems like you're overcomplicating stuff. And maybe it even still is, but it turned out to not really be a detriment. So this is the Doctor and Jesse. And Jesse is not very happy with the Doctor right now. She hasn't had the best time traveling with him, and he is not very good at addressing that. He kind of just wants to move forward as if everything's fine, and she's making it quite clear to him that it's really not right now. But it's funny. You could almost make the parallel to the 13th Doctor with avoiding topics she didn't want to talk about. Although in this case, he's less avoiding it outright and more just kind of being like, look, can we just skip to the end where you're no longer mad at me and we can just get back to how things were? That's kind of how he's coming at this. And when somebody actually has stuff they need to talk about and process, no, actually that doesn't work too well. But that dynamic is very much at play. And they get brought to this planet that is basically has a prison facility for Daleks. Now let's first talk about that conceit, because that's interesting. Because generally, when you're taking on Daleks, you destroy them. What's interesting here is this is a civilization that, after having been confronted with the Daleks, made a conscious choice to be their polar opposite. So whereas the Daleks were genetically manipulated in a way to favor them wanting to kill, wanting violence, turning to hatred as a core feature of who they are, this society made compassion and refusal to kill a core part of who they are. And so as a result of that, when they were able to take on Daleks and defeat them eventually, they didn't destroy them. They housed them in prisons, because that was, to their way of thinking, the more humane thing to do. And it was a way to prove that we won't sink to their level. We won't kill them. And so it's already kind of an interesting premise on that basis. And there's some weirdness going on in this prison. Basically, both people and Daleks are starting to break into song. So, yeah, this actually is pretty much a musical. And it's quite entertaining as that. I do kind of wish, this is going to sound very weird given the premise. I do kind of wish that the narrative was a little more serious. Towards the tail end, it feels very silly. And again, the premise is very silly, but on the other hand, it makes sense when you realize that this was basically released as this fan series' Christmas special. So it was kind of leaning on that to get away. And like that's integrated into it as well. Jesse wants to get home for Christmas. And so like it's actually part of the narrative, as with the Christmas specials, it often is. But we're dealing with a situation where they kind of are doing the same thing that the main show does that I would rather they didn't, which is to lean on the idea of, it's Christmas. We don't have to take it seriously. And while I will grant that got us as far as the initial Daleks are singing a coordinated number, I'm great there, but then they keep going, and later on it's just a bit not taking the whole thing very seriously, and I kind of wish they hadn't quite gone that far. I like that. I would have liked it if they had gone far enough into silly Christmas to get us that premise of all the singing and the musical, but not quite so far where they stop treating the overall story as seriously. Part of the problem with that is, unfortunately, an eventual explanation for where the singing comes from. There's these other beings called the Torchies, which, first of all, that's a name you can't take seriously, and they, as characters, are very difficult to take seriously. And that was kind of the point where the dramatic wind came out of it. Because, like, yes, it was silly up to that point, but it was taking the silliness seriously in a way that I was really enjoying, and then it wasn't quite taking it as seriously anymore. As for the songs, they're pretty good. It is interesting. There is a mix of singing quality in terms of the ability of the actors to sing the songs well, hit the notes, etc. And there isn't an inherent problem with there being a mix and a range of talent because, well, obviously the Daleks don't sound great singing. That is one thing where like it kind of steps out of the out, because during the songs they do have actual full subtitles come up on the screen, which is very helpful. That was a good idea. But then beyond that, some of the characters, like one of the characters who kind of develops a crush on Jesse, he is surprisingly good as a singer. And like the woman who's running the prison, wow, she's quite good. But not everyone has to be an amazing singer. I can look at something like, say, Gallivant, which is, God, well, does anyone even remember that show? I'm going to do it anyway. Vinnie Jones was in it, and Vinnie Jones played a character, and he did get a song. And Vinnie Jones doesn't have a good voice for singing, but the way that he sang still totally fit the character and still made the songs fun. There is, unfortunately, a minor problem when the two people with the weakest voices, at least by my estimation, are also your lead characters. Because the Doctor is okay and Jesse isn't great. And I feel like they kind of recognize that because they shake up her singing style at a few points and they give her something it's not really a rap, but they sort of simplify it a little bit later, but none of it really fully clicks. She might have been able to get there, like being worked with more. You very much get the sense she's not a trained singer, and that's not a crime. But I do wonder with a fan production if it would have helped if there could have been more time and effort put into getting her some singing training. But that's not really a realistic expectation of a fan production. So just know that getting into it. I'm like the weaker singers aren't so bad that it kills it. It's not, we're not dealing with that, but like there are varying skill levels in terms of the voice cast. And overall, it was nice. As much as I'm saying that I feel like it got a little too silly towards the tail end, I do appreciate the fact that after the last one of these I reviewed, which was really dark, it's nice to know that this particular run of fan productions can go the other way. And it gives me, I think, a healthier view of the overall thing. Not that I'm necessarily expecting to listen to all the other entries in this. I mean, unless I'm commissioned. They're good, but understand I'm at a point where all the stuff that I do takes up so much time that listening to or watching stuff just for fun is not really something I get around to much anymore. I gotta get my life sorted. But anyway, Symphony of the Daleks it's weird in a good way. I do wish it took itself a little more seriously. The song, quality is variable, but there are some surprisingly good vocal performances in this. The character work is pretty interesting. And even just beyond the fact that Daleks are singing, just the nature of the setting, like this place where these Daleks are treated differently than elsewhere, and seeing like a guard who almost seems to be building a relationship a little bit with the Dalek, although you find yourself wondering, is he actually building a relationship with this thing, or is he just like personifying it the way people personify their pets? And it's got some interesting dynamics. So even outside of the singing gimmick, it's doing some interesting things with the Daleks and asking some interesting questions with characters like the sort of the warden who's running the place. Regardless of what your initial intentions are, what does being around and monitoring creatures like this do to you? And these are all interesting questions, and they're touched on. Some are explored more deeply than others. Oh, and I also appreciate the fact that the nature of the bursting out into song it's very much in line with an actual musical, because the general standard rule with a good musical, at least, is unless the entire thing is sung front to back, which some are, but if it's not that, the point at which a character bursts out into song should be the point at which there's something they want to express that is so intense they can't express it any other way. And that's basically what's going on here, where you have characters burst into song, not only about stuff that they feel very strongly, but that stuff that they are holding back and don't want to say, which obviously leans into the nature of the doctor-companion dynamic right now, where she's got a lot of issues with the doctor, and he's not giving her the space to say it. And there's also some stuff with a guard who like ends up crushing on Jesse, and that made me a little bit, except that finding out that him bursting into song meant that he was trying really hard to repress that, to me at least says that, okay, regardless of whether you felt this for a person you literally just frickin' met, which is a little creepy, dude, at least you understood that, like, okay, I should not be doing anything with that feeling, and you were trying to push it down, and that's why it came out as song. And so it kind of tiptoes around some creepy man-woman interactions there a little bit, but it sidesteps them just enough through sort of the specific mechanics of how all this works that, at least for me, it didn't drag it down. And when I first realized this guy was crushing, I was like, oh God, no. But I felt like they walked a pretty fine line on that, and it worked. Symphony of the Daleks, overall, I did enjoy this. Have you heard it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Feel free to recommend any other Doctor Who fan works. I can't promise I'll get to them. Actually, odds are I won't. But make suggestions for other folks down in the comments. Let's share what we like that is out there that is not official. But don't worry too much about it. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. Well, it's Patreon supporter shout-out time, folks. So thank you to Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfulla, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Angus Bjarnason, Linda Walters, Emu Delkey, Leotha Boyd, Toy Lowly, Becky Spark, Fernabilax the Poodle, Zach, Tracy Scrabbit, General Contact Unit Problem Child, Angry Casperl, Tim Price, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, and Brendan LaRose. Thanks so much for your help. You can get your name read out too. Check out the rewards in the Patreon. Is that what they should do? Should they check the Patreon?